Do you believe in ghosts? Well, how about a ghost who knocks on your bed, lifts you off your feet, and throws objects around the room? If you don't believe me, maybe you'll believe the dozens of investigators who claim it happened to the Hodgson family. Are they liars or victims? In the quiet suburb of Enfield, North London, in 1977, a story began that would terrify the world. A story of voices, levitation, and violent attacks. This is the true case of the Enfield Poltergeist. It all started with a phone call. Mrs. Peggy Hodgson, a 32-year-old mother of 4, phoned her local priest after hearing strange noises coming from her children's bedroom. Her daughters, Janet and Margaret, aged 11 and 13, claimed that every night their beds would shake violently. At first, Father Ralph Whedon thought it was just imagination. After all, he'd spoken with the girls before about their fascination with the paranormal. They often watched horror movies on television, which might have inspired their wild claims. But then the knocking began. One evening, Father Ryan was saying prayers over the telephone when the line went dead. Startled, he looked up to see Janet standing over her bed, holding a crucifix. "There's something down there," she cried, pointing to the foot of her bed. The priest turned the light off and crouched beside the bed, listening intently. Then he heard it. A knock. He felt the mattress vibrate. He could have sworn he saw the blankets lift slightly as if pushed by an unseen hand. Later that night, Father Ryan reported his findings to the police. Enfield Police Station received a flood of calls from residents in the area, each claiming to have heard loud bangs during the night. Some spoke of shaking beds, others of flickering lights, but most refused to come forward with evidence, embarrassed to admit they'd been frightened by childish games. However, one brave officer, Sergeant Elizabeth Klein, visited the house. She sat in the darkened living room as Peggy Hodgson told her of the previous night's events. Suddenly, the arm of a nearby chair moved towards them. Startled, the two women screamed. When the light came on, they found the chair had moved across the room. Sergeant Klein immediately radioed for backup. Moments later, more officers arrived, and as they stood in the bedroom, listening intently, another knock echoed through the house. They all heard it, and so the case was officially opened. The Enfield Poltergeist investigation began. On September 1, 1977, a team of 5 investigators from the Society for Psychical Research visited the Hodgson family. By this point, objects were flying through the air, slamming into the walls and exploding light bulbs. Books rained down from shelves. Children's toys were hurled like deadly projectiles. The team set up cameras to capture the activity, but what they saw shocked them. A chair moved across the room. Then a book flew through the air, striking one of the researchers on the head. The following night, the activity grew even worse. Once again, the SPR returned, and this time they brought more equipment. Not only did they witness furniture moving, shaking, and knocking, but they also captured the sound of an inhuman voice. The entity spoke through Janet, claiming its name was Bill. As the haunting continued, other investigators joined the hunt. On November, Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigators, arrived at the scene. Lorraine, a self-taught clairvoyant and medium, immediately sensed evil. Within seconds of entering the home, she began screaming, "Get away from her! Satan, get your filthy hands off her!" She fell to the floor, writhing in agony as she battled with the demon trying to possess Janet. Meanwhile, Ed Warren, an expert in demonic possessions, questioned the girls. Lorraine's warning had made it clear that Janet was in danger. As the haunting progressed, the family grew increasingly terrified. Mrs. Hodgson slept in a room next to her daughters, too scared to let them face the poltergeist alone. One night, the ghost began shaking the bed violently. Fearing for their safety, the family fled the house and stayed with relatives. Even here, the poltergeist followed. Doors were flung open. Objects flew across the room and terrifying voices whispered in the night. But the most chilling incident was yet to come. One night, while staying at their aunt's house, Janet levitated above her bed. Her body twisted and turned in impossible ways. Her legs were pulled up towards her chest and her head arched unnaturally backwards. The whole room grew freezing cold, and the sound of chains dragging metal moans echoed through the house. Mrs. Hodgson screamed in terror as she watched her daughter lifted slowly off her bed and rotated in the air. Witnesses described seeing Janet suspended above the bed, as if tied to an invisible string. Others said she resembled a rag doll being twisted and pulled by unseen forces. And when the ghost was finished, she collapsed onto the bed, gasping for breath. But there was no mark on the bed or the wall where she'd apparently been tied. Mrs. Hodgson contacted the Enfield police, who once again sent an officer to investigate. At first, Sergeant Klein didn't believe the claims, thinking the family had made the whole thing up to avoid paying rent. But what she saw and heard convinced her otherwise. The sergeant spent the night watching and recording the activity. She saw books fly through the air. She felt the bed vibrate under her touch, and she heard chains dragging moans from beneath the bed. Lorraine Warren claimed the haunting was caused by the spirit of a man named Bill, who died in the house in the 19th century. According to local records, William Staife, a lodger in the house, died suddenly on August 12, 1889. His body was discovered by the landlady, Mary Harvey, who noticed a strange smell coming from his room. Inside, she found William lying dead on the floor. His face was contorted in pain, and his eyes wide open and staring. Despite the efforts of local doctors, they were unable to determine a cause of death. Perhaps he'd suffered a heart attack or a stroke. But because his body was embalmed before burial, the truth would never be known. Many people in the area knew the story of William's mysterious death, and some believed his restless spirit was haunting the house. Over the years, the hauntings continued. New tenants moved in, but they soon fled, citing strange occurrences and frightening noises. It seemed as if the house couldn't escape its dark past. By 1977, however, most people in Enfield had long forgotten about William. That is, until the Hodgson sisters began experiencing terrifying supernatural activity. While investigating the case, Ed and Lorraine Warren uncovered more details about the life and death of William Suff. They learned he'd lived a troubled life, suffering from ill health and poverty. He was known to frequent the local pub, where he drank heavily and brawled with other patrons. He'd been arrested several times for fighting and had even served time in prison. Was this troubled man the ghost haunting the Hodgson family? And if so, why did he target them? The Warrens were convinced William was responsible for the haunting. According to them, the spirit had been awakened by the presence of Janet, who shared a birthday with William's niece. Coincidence? You decide. But the Warrens believed that Janet's birthday party had somehow opened the door to the spirit world, allowing William to enter the house. From that point on, the spirit became fixated on her, using her as a vessel to communicate with the living. And communicate he did. Through recordings, researchers captured hundreds of ghostly whispers, moans, and voices. Some were barely audible, but others rang out with startling clarity. One particularly chilling message read, "Why won't you let me go?" Another whispered, "I can't leave here." Perhaps these were the words of a troubled soul trapped beyond the grave, reaching out for help or simply desperate to be heard. But not everyone was convinced. Many skeptics argued that the haunting was nothing more than a clever hoax. How could a ghost shake a bed, they asked, or hurl objects across a room? What about the levitating bed? Critics pointed out that the photographs had been doctored, suggesting that Janet was actually hanging from a wire or fishing line. As for the voice, perhaps it was a trick of editing, allowing the Warrens to add their own soundtrack of screams and whispers. However, there were those who stood by their experiences. Sergeant Klein, who witnessed the shaking bed, remained adamant that something unusual was occurring. The SPR researchers who faced flying books and shaking cameras also rejected the skeptics' claims. And as for the Warrens, they continued to investigate haunted houses and locations around the world, forever changed by their experience in Enfield. But what happened to the Hodgson family? Did they find peace, or are they still haunted by the ghost of Bill? Sadly, we may never know. After nearly 2 years of terrifying activity, the hauntings simply stopped. No one knows why. Perhaps Bill's mission was accomplished, or maybe he tired of the constant disturbance. Whatever the reason, the house fell silent, and the Enfield Poltergeist became one of the most documented hauntings in history. So the question is, what do you think? Was Janet truly possessed by a spirit named Bill? Or was it all an elaborate trick that fooled the world? In Enfield, the house still stands. Ordinary, silent. But if walls could talk, what secrets would they whisper from beyond the shadows?